All right, hello everyone. I am Miss Jade and I teach art. Today we're going to learn how to make meditative spider webs. All right. Before we begin, I always start my class out with a question of the day. So today's question is, what is one thing that made you happy today? For me, it is getting to cuddle with my super cute dog, Ernie. He always makes me smile and just brings me so much joy. Think about something that made you happy today and maybe share it with a friend or a family member. So let's talk a little bit about what is meditative art. Meditative art is making art and paying attention to how it makes you feel, what emotions you're feeling, what you're thinking, and it takes a lot of focus and yet none at all. Usually this is done with repetitive or repeating drawings or crafts. It is a lot like making a spider web, which brings us to today's activity. To create your meditative spider web, you are going to need construction paper, glue, scissors, and something to draw with. It could be markers, crayons, or colored pencils. You don't need all three, just something that you can draw and color with. All right, we are on to step 1. Step 1 is going to be coloring our paper. So we have construction paper, and you can cut the paper in half so that it's a little smaller to work with. And you're going to take either your crayons, markers, or colored pencils and decorate your paper. For my paper, I chose lines and scribbles and squiggles, but you can do any type of design you like. Just remember that whatever design you make, we don't want it to be too complicated or too detailed because we are going to cut this up later. So whatever you do, it can be super easy. You can do it really slow lines. You can do it really quickly. You can put hearts. You can put little dashes, little squiggles and dots. It's really up to you. So I'm decorating my paper along with you. Just trying to get some different lines and colors. In the picture on the presentation here, I had a pink piece of paper and I used yellow markers, some green markers, some red markers. I just chose some colors that I like. You can use any type of color. It's all up to you. You make the rules. So on the paper I have in front of me here, which you can't see today, I'm having a light green marks on yellow paper. Just want to be really colorful. Okay. Let's move on to step 2, which is to cut your paper into strips. So we have our colorful paper, and we're going to take the short side and cut it into long strips. If all of my things will stop rolling off of the desk. Okay. So we're going to take our paper and cut it into strips. They don't have to be perfect. We're just trying to make them smaller so they can be more manageable to work with. You can do this with scissors if you have some, or with your hands. Just try to make some strips. It's okay if they rip or break because we're going to make them even smaller in a second. All right. So step 3, we are going to cut our strips even smaller into smaller shapes. So I'm just going to take my scissors and just cut them. You can cut them into squares. You can do some geometric shapes. It's really up to you. Just want to make sure that they are not too small, because we want to be able to glue them nicely. And if they're too small, they're going to slip around and it's going to be hard to get it onto our glue and onto our lines, which we'll be moving on to in a moment. So we're just cutting our strips into manageable chunks. Just so that it's a little easier to work with. Almost done. Okay, let's move on to the next step, which is to draw our guidelines. So these are going to be very important because we need to be able to see these very easily. So on a piece of paper, taking a bright color, I'm going to use red because red is pretty easy to see. We are going to draw a dot anywhere on our paper. You can see on the presentation, I drew my dot kind of in the upper top left corner, but you can draw yours in the middle, you can draw it at the bottom, you can draw it to the side, wherever you like. So maybe for this one, I'll draw my dot kind of closer to the middle. So we have a dot. Now from the dot, we are going to draw lines from where the dot starts all the way to the edge of our paper. So you can draw as many or as few lines as you like, but try to make sure that there is a good amount of space between your lines. So I'm drawing lines all around my paper. And it looks a little bit like this. Now, we're going to draw half circles to make it look like the spider's web. You can make as many or as little half circles as you want, and you can do them in different shapes. So here are some examples of spider webs. We have spider webs that are kind of like curly cues. They go around and around like little spirals. And on the inside of these long lines, similar to the long lines that we drew, they have straight lines, they have curved lines, and they have some droopy half circle lines. So you can choose what you want your lines to look like. I'm going to do something kind of in the middle. I'm going to go curved, but a little straighter than what my example looks like, just to test it out. That's the great thing about art. You can do the same thing several times and do it in different ways. So I'm trying something different today. And maybe if you've done a similar project, you can do it different from how you did before. So here's how mine is looking. Pretty straight, a little bit of a spiral going on. And now we're going to color around our guidelines. So we have these guidelines. Mine are bright red so I can see them, and we're going to color around them. We still want to be able to see our guideline, but we're going to color as close to them as we can. You can use any color that you like. I'm going to use colors similar to what I used in my example. So I'm going to do some dark blues, some dark purples, and maybe a little magenta in there just to kind of spice things up a bit. And since this step is a little long, it involves a little coloring, how about we get a bit of music while we do it? We're almost there. Are you almost done? Because I am. give you a few seconds to finish up, and then we're going to move on to the next step. There we go. All right, now let's move on to the next step. We've got our background all colored, and we can still see our guidelines for our spider web. So next, we are going to glue the shapes onto our web. Now, I felt very relaxed and happy while I was coloring all this in. Coloring is a very relaxing, meditative activity that you can kind of relax into and not think too much, but also be aware of how you're feeling. So now we're going to do the same when we glue our pieces of paper onto our lines. Now, the strips that we cut are a bit too big to go right onto our lines, right? Unless you made a really big spider web. So what we're going to do, we're going to take these little pieces and either cut them with your scissors or rip them into smaller pieces. So let's get our glue stick, and we're going to start gluing our pieces on. Once your pieces are ready, you can start gluing. It'll be a bit easier to start gluing from the dot that you made out to the edges of your paper. I hope you have all of your pieces glued. I just finished mine, and here is how it's looking. So now our last step, our very last step, is to have a gallery walk. And that means to show off the pieces that we've made. I have a little spider friend in the corner who says, "You did amazing," and I agree.